Patrick Mahomes has as good a line as he's going to get this season with Orlando Brown back in camp. Should report very soonly on the field for you to see. We're going to talk about him, Frank Clark, and who's standing out as the pads go on at Chiefs camp on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, friends and neighbors worldwide. It is the second week of training camp, and today was day one of padded practices. We have a lot to go over today. Obviously, a lot of big news. We're going to hit it all. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL33.com, and RGRFootball.com, all of which you can find from my Twitter handle at Ryan Tracy NFL right over here. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are part of the podcast network Locked On, and that means your team for free every day on every platform. You can find us and a lot of other shows all around the network. Thanks for making us your first listen. Check out the draft show for your second. And woo, Chris, we got a lot to go on.
I was going to say, are you going to breathe or are you just going to kind of keep going?
Yeah.
Chris Clark, you can find me over Chiefs Corner. We do have a lot to talk about. Patrick Mahomes does have his best offensive line back that he could possibly have. I want to throw this out there really quick because I saw it break right before we came on. Brian Baldinger is thinking that Creed Humphrey is going to be an All-Pro this year potentially, and Trey Smith should be a Pro Bowler. So just want to throw that out there. I know we're not going to talk about that too much, but wanted to throw it out.
But it feeds into the topic of the day, though, that, we talked about when Orlando should be in for his own sake, for the team's sake. And it sounds like he came to the similar conclusion. Would have loved it if he had actually been able to travel and get checked in and stuff over the weekend on Sunday when they weren't practicing so that he could have been out there today. But he does recognize that being in pads does help him. And through his agent, we understand that was part of the reason to come in now, get on the field and get going, to get ready. Interesting that he termed it, and as well as growing your leadership abilities. Travis Kelce referred to him today as one of the leaders in the group. And so that's my big question. Leader did what he do for business needs. Now he makes the realization, makes a change. He comes into camp. We should see him likely tomorrow, if not Wednesday. And that tells me that at least he's on track. He's still thinking about competing. He's still focused on this season and doing the best that he can for this team. And that gives Patrick his best option because of Lucas Niang's injury to have his top O-line for week one.
Yeah, and I will say the other thing, we do need to point this out. He cannot practice in pads for 3 days after when he finally reports. And he did not make the transaction list today, which means he has not signed his franchise tender. So it will not be until at least tomorrow. Then he's got to get through the conditioning test and all of that stuff in order to be able to practice. So it could still be Wednesday before he actually is able to practice at all. And he will only be able to do individual drills, will not be able to have pads on for 3 days, I believe, after he starts practice. So That's going to be something to watch. Sounds like he could be starting about the same time as Dunlap. Sorry.
It should be really interesting to get those two guys on the field. But overall, maybe that's the impetus. Hey, finally, I'm going to go in because now I'm missing the first day of pads. Okay. That's good. Good for him for coming around. I'm actually pleasantly surprised because I was starting to get the feeling that maybe this was going to drag on towards the end of camp and you were going to miss out another week at least and kind of wait till after the first preseason game. I think for Patrick and for the offense as a whole, I think this is a sigh of relief.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a great deal. I think that you look at what this really means for this team and for Orlando. I'm very impressed. I was not expecting him to show up. We talked about this yesterday when it wasn't reported that he was going to be showing up, and it broke right after we recorded the show, which goes to show you kind of how things happen. So, I think that it's great to see Orlando actually acknowledge that him being there and him having the best season he could possibly have means him being in camp, means him getting practiced, means him showing the team that he is a part of this team and he wants to be here. And I think that's the biggest key, and that's the biggest reason why he showed up when he showed up.
And for Patrick, it sets it up that they can get their timing back down. They can continue to take steps forward from where they were last season. Orlando's got a lot to prove. Supposedly he's in better shape. Supposedly his footwork is better. Supposedly his weight is down. Let's get a look at that. Let's see if that actually leads towards what we're hoping is an improved performance in 2022, particularly against speed rushers. That should help Patrick deliver the ball to all these targets that really went off and stole all the storylines from week one.
And it sounds like, based on what happened at camp today, they're kind of still in the storylines a little bit. So that's a good sign too. And if you go and look at Chiefs Twitter, and I don't think it was actually on a Chiefs account, Chiefs specific account, or a team account. I think it was just on Chiefs Twitter somewhere. And I wish I had the tweet in front of me. But somebody showed a back shoulder type throw or an over the top type throw that was more of almost a fade route that Mahomes threw to Juju. If they're doing that in camp, that means that's going to become part of this team and part of what they're going to be doing on offense. If that is true, that completely changes what Kansas City can do. And people are going to think I'm overstating that. I'm not, because that completely changes what they've done in the past. They've been trying to get people as open as they possibly can. If you're willing to take those shots, even when somebody doesn't look open like they have in the past for this team, that's going to be great for Kansas City and this offense.
And we're going to talk about Juju and the other guys that have stepped up and continue those storylines here later in the show. But what this means for Patrick being able to deliver those balls is Orlando Brown being there next to Joe Thuney. Really glad that they didn't do the experiment with Joe at left tackle, because I think that would just kind of slow down Joe's getting into his rhythm that he needs every year. But like you talked about earlier with Baldinger's comments, now you have your excellent, top tier elite left guard in place. You have who may become the best center in the game in Creed Humphrey. And
that's not overstating it, honestly.
No. It should have been a Pro Bowler last year.
Yep.
Let's be real. Honestly,
if he wasn't a rookie, he would have been.
True. Honestly, I think you could argue, and I think I have argued, Mitch Morse had just a little bit better run blocking when he came out his rookie season. But that's how good Creed Humphrey is. He should be at least top 3, maybe the best in the league.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I will say I had him as one of the Chiefs' best draft picks last year, and I still believe he's one of the best draft picks that they had last year. A lot of solid players, a lot of good players, but he by far, in a way, exceeded all expectations that I had, and I had high expectations. I didn't expect Pro Bowl. I expected high level, above average play. He blew that out of the water. He
did. And I think Trey Smith is a season behind him, but I think he has the ability to get to the Pro Bowl this year and be that good. So now with Orlando in camp, you are going to have your elite 3 interior guys, a top 20 tackle on the left, and you just have to get by with the guys that were on the right. Some of them had some issues today. We're going to talk about them in a little bit, along with Frank Clark and what he's doing, but I'm getting hungry.
And you want to talk about our friends over at Built Bar, and I can't blame you, because if you've not tried these cookie dough chunk puff bars, you absolutely need to try them. That you are depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. There is a new flavor, delicious, indulgent cookie dough, and I have already tried these. They sent us a box. I absolutely love them. They're delicious. I need to order more because they are already gone. Let me introduce you to the new flavor, cookie dough chunk puffs. They have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of baking it, plus it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Run to Built.com right now to snag a box for you and the family. It will be the perfect treat. Ryan, you might want to hide this from your daughters. Just gonna throw that out there. Or you can find a really good hiding place and just hoard them for yourself. Best of luck on that, sir, because I know you have a hard time. You are absolutely going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff. You do need to try these. Go to Built.com right now and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com.
And before we go any farther, I want to give a shout out to anybody who is deployed around the world. Last month's rankings came out. We had some significant increases in places like Italy and Iceland and Switzerland and in the Ukraine. For those folks that enjoy football there, just want to say hello and thank you for stretching out Chiefs Kingdom around the world a little bit farther. We appreciate that very much.
Thank you for your service.
Cheers. Stretching out is something that Frank Clark's able to do because he's got some good length. He's happily sharing that. And I think what strikes me about Frank Clark has done since camp started is not only showing up, that was a first step, right? He's been very, honestly, blatantly frank about his true situation, about his lack of performance last year, about the things that he had to change in his life. And that's all great for him. The thing that's really standing out to me, and it continues today, and it's starting to show up a little bit more, is how he's willing to mentor the younger guys. Most specifically, George Karlaftis, but a number of guys that he's working with after practice, etc. I think that starts to show up more and more on the field as the season goes on. We may not really reap the benefits until mid-season or after, but sharing your knowledge, being the guy that Michael Bennett was for him back in the day, I think that shows a maturity level that maybe you could salvage something out of this last year with Frank Clark and really push that forward through these other guys who may be on the roster next season.
Yeah, and I think that we kind of talked about this a little bit. I think that this shows a great maturity from him, and it shows that he is willing to be here and try to help this team be the best they possibly can, because he realizes this is his last year. This is his best chance to get another ring is this season. And he's only going to do that if he helps the guys underneath him and the guys under him. So I think that's a real positive sign for him. And kudos to him for, being willing to step up and really taking responsibility for lackluster play last year.
Yeah. And that's, I think that humility goes a long way. Now, some of that showed up on the practice field today, specifically with he and Karlaftis getting some reps against the guys that are filling in for Orlando Brown. And clearly both the guys who lined up on the left in Roderick Johnson in particular, but Wiley on the right today, had a couple of issues. And I think what's really come through when you take a look at those reps is that Frank does look like his first step is dramatically quicker. He's still got to be able to hunker down. I'm interested to see how he distributes his weight now that he's lighter, because what we've seen over the last couple of seasons is him getting run out of pockets, run out the back a lot. And so if he can get to that edge with that first and second step a little bit quicker, it's harder to run him out. And he's able to get that leverage difference. And so I'm really interested to see that. A lot of folks were really praising him today on social media, et cetera. And a lot of folks were really looking at Karlaftis. And I want to know your opinion, because his bull rush looks as good to me against the backup tackles in camp right now as it looked in college. So I'm encouraged by that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic development. If he can continue to build on that and try to get a little bit more added to his game, added to his repertoire, I think that's going to bode very well for this team. So it's something to watch over the next couple of weeks, because this is day one of pads. Everybody's adjusting. Everybody's trying to see what they can do, how they can do it, what they can get away with. And they're all learning other people's moves. There are going to be some of those tackles that learn what Karlaftis is trying to do. And the question is can he adapt to them trying to shut him down? Because that's going to happen. And it's going to happen with the Chiefs backups, but it's also going to happen in the NFL. So it's very important that he's able to get past that and try to figure out how he's going to address it going forward. And I think he's going to. I'm encouraged by Frank reaching out and basically mentoring him at this point in his career. I think that's a great sign. And if he is willing to put in the work, which he has always seemed to be like the guy that is going to be willing to put in that work, I think that is going to be paying dividends for the Chiefs for several years.
And I think very specifically, not to get too in the weeds, folks, but I do want to point out something. Frank was working with George Karlaftis specifically on a two-hand swipe today. That's a pretty advanced hand fighting technique, because you got to cross your body, which kind of reduces your leverage in terms of power, but you got to be quick with it. And George Karlaftis' hands in college were not noted to be quick. They were strong, but it wasn't something that was lightning out there. And so working on that aspect of it, I think, is really a step forward, especially when you take in light that one rep that ended up on social media that people were very, very excited about was one where Andrew Wiley basically ran Karlaftis out of the back of the pocket with one arm. And that's exactly the kind of thing that Karlaftis needs to work on, is getting that pull chopped out so that he can make that corner. And I think for a first week in practice in camp, I think it's really, really encouraging of what we're going to see from him. And I'm looking forward to a lot more. We'll go as we go along and let you guys know about that. But there are other guys that are standing out at other positions in this camp. We're going to talk about them coming up next. You talked about Juju a minute ago. Where's Juju on the depth chart to you? It's unofficial. The Chiefs haven't even put one out yet. But if we put one out today, where are you putting him?
One, probably.
One? I'm down with that.
It's really hard. It's 1A, 1A. I mean, him and MVS are going to be right there neck and neck. And I honestly don't know that this team is going to have a number one wide receiver specifically. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be kind of a guy that's going to be a hybrid. It's going to be what guy, MVS or Juju, is going to be able to step in that role each week. And honestly, if you look at it, it makes a lot of sense because you're going to be in a scenario where you're going up against different corners every week. Which guy is going to be that guy that you want going against their number one corner? Because it's quite a good possibility that with the ability of those guys to do different things, maybe you have a guy that is not going to be as good against Juju in his size that would be better against MVS. So maybe you put Juju in that spot one week. The next week you go to MVS because the corner's different. It's a matchup game. It always is going to be a matchup game.
I hate to say it, fantasy players. It's going to be different every week. It's going to be
different every week. And it should be, but that's encouraging for this team. Like I like that ability. I like the thought, yeah, it sucks for fantasy, and I get that, but I like the ability of having multiple different guys to be able to do that.
I agree. And it is Marquez. Don't say my name wrong. Valdez Scantling. He was very adamant about that in his appearance with the media. And I do think that there are days that he will be the one. And I think that that's nice that you can move that around. A couple of side notes that I saw today was that Sky Moore and Pacheco are now back there taking some punt action. And I think
you saw that too.
Yeah. Well, were you going to get to that?
Bring that up. Mm-hmm. I was going to bring that up. I saw that, and that's encouraging. You see Pacheco being a guy that can step in and be the number one return guy. That's huge. If he can fill that role, he's definitely got a spot on this roster. And I was thinking he'd be on the roster anyway because of special teams, but I didn't expect them to give him the number one spot. And right now, it is what it is. They are having him go be the number one guy to be returning. And it sounds like Sky Moore is number two. If that's truly the case, I don't know what they're going to do with Hardman. I know that was kickoff, but it doesn't look like Hardman's in that role anymore, and they don't want him in that role anymore.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, for punt,
so what is that going to mean going forward for them?
Yeah. He may do the kickoff work. I don't know. We'll see what it comes around to the season. I think the punt work is more iffy in terms of protection and making sure that he's making decisions and those kind of things. So letting him concentrate on playing offense. And I think that does mean, folks, for those of you that want Sky Moore to be one of the starting three, it looks like that's prioritizing Hardman right now. If Sky's back there taking the punts and Hardman is not, but that's okay. That's fine. I think this helps.
The more you can do, though.
Exactly. And just get on the roster. For Pacheco, I think that's important. I didn't hear about any red zone touches for him today with the ones. So that was one thing I was kind of looking for. Now, I don't have it confirmed yet, but as I understand, he didn't get that. Maybe he'll get that tomorrow. Who knows? But make it on the punt return, and you can grow into that role.
Yeah. Make it wherever you can go on special teams, and you will get an opportunity. Dave Tobe is going to be looking for his guys. He's going to be pounding the table for his guys. And his guys generally are going to be guys that can contribute at least somewhat on offense and defense. So I think that's going to be a good sign for Pacheco. And obviously Sky Moore is going to be on this roster. There's no doubt about that. But, you look at some of the different positional groups and where you have questions. The pads finally come on. How's Kennard going to look, in 3 or 4 days? I mean, we know day one how things went, but how's that going to look in 3 or 4 days? Is it going to change? Are they going to flip him and Wiley? Are they going to give Kennard a chance to play some one snaps? And if he takes the one snaps, what's he going to do with them?
Right.
All that plays into how is this going to shake out. And with Brown coming back, you want to figure out who your right tackle is so you can get as much chemistry between all of those guys as you can. Now, to be clear, there's going to be times where you're going to have somebody step in as like an injury type thing. They did that every single camp. They do that. They throw in second string guys to play, say, okay, this guy's out for an injury here. So they go with somebody else. That's brilliant coaching. That's exactly what you should be doing. So don't take too much into that. It's a question of who is the guy that is there constantly for that day.
Yeah, you got to prepare for the worst, but be ready to accept it. And it's a solid plan. So on the defensive side, I thought we saw some interesting stuff from Chanel, to tell you the truth. Sniffing out the run, like Chanel looked exactly like I expected him to look during his first training camp. Really well coming downhill against the run. Saw a rep where it was a little iffy about where he was going in back pedal, but hey, he's learning, he's getting there. It does look improved from OTAs to me, so I'm optimistic about that too. I didn't get to see him try any pass rush, so I don't know if there just wasn't enough video out there for me to review, or if he didn't get those reps. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. But anybody else stand out to you today?
No, not really. I will say about Chanel, we always knew that he's a guy that when the pads come on, he's going to be playing better than when the pads aren't on, because he's able to actually go full bore and do what he does. I mean, that's how he plays. So it makes a lot of sense that he's going to show up a little bit better when the pads come on. Some guys look worse. He's going to look better. That's just the way he plays and the way he is. And I think that's good for this team. I think they need that type of attitude on this defense. You start looking at the rest of the defense. You have questions at different positions. You have questions. Okay, is Karlaftis really going to be able to step in and be that DE that you want next to Clark? Is he going to be able to give you that pass rush? We're going to find out a lot over this next 2 weeks. What is he able to do? Is he able to learn from what you talked about earlier with that Wiley, pushing him out of the pocket with one arm? You can't do that. I mean, I'm not trying to be harsh on the kid, but you can't do that on a regular basis in the NFL, because you'll never win and players will know how to play you. He's going to have to adapt, and this is the exact time you want him to be doing that, because he's going to learn from it.
Yeah, and that's why I brought it up. Like, working on a two-hand swipe when it's not something that's already in your repertoire in the first week of camp as a reaction to that play. I mean, that's impressive. I can't say it was because of that play. I'm putting that together as a leap of faith there. But that's proactive. It's not. It also shows me he's not overwhelmed by the professional game right now. Meaning that he can think, he can do what he's doing, and he can also think outside the box. Like, what do I need to work on? What's going to help me take the next step forward? And it's not like, drinking from a fire hose for him right now. And that's a positive sign for him as a player.
No, it really is. And I think that you continue to see the young guys push, and you continue to see, what are you going to see from Bolton the rest of this week? What are you going to see from Gay? What are you going to see from the back end of the defense? And all the different corners are going to be running through different places. I really like the corner and wide receiver matchups, just because the one-on-ones where they're getting thrown to in air with nothing else going on, because then you really get to see what some of these wide receivers are able to do to some of the corners. And Williams got beat, I think it was by Hardman, because Hardman is able to stop on a dime, change direction quickly, and get out of his break real quick. That isn't Williams' game near as much. But he's also got to learn. That's one of those things where it's all about technique. It's all about training. This is where you want them messing up. This is where you want them looking a little foolish, because he did look a little foolish, but that's okay. This is what you want.
Yeah, it's how you get better. And I think that they're well on their way. Before we wrap it up, folks, I want to take a second for all of you in Topeka, and certainly to my friends. For Terry Hyder, we lost a good one yesterday, and he will definitely be missed. I just want to say that for everybody listening. We have lots more coming for you. They practice again. We're on the road towards the first preseason game. A lot to come, and we're going to have some more for you every day. Matt's going to be with us tomorrow, give us his firsthand inclinations about who's doing what, where, and how well. We'll also follow up later in the week as they get through this practice week. We'll see Orlando Brown and Carlos Dunlap here pretty soon, so be ready. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.